All right, what's up, everyone? We are talking about imposter syndrome today. So, something I've experienced a lot recently, unfortunately. So, it prompted me to do a lot of studying into it and find out what it is and like what mindset shift you can make to accept, but also beat it. So, um, yeah, that's the topic. So the definition of imposter syndrome is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So, yeah, I mean, it's almost like if you get a promotion at a job, and you you feel like you don't deserve it, and then you get this sort of overwhelming feeling that, hey, what I've earned is I didn't deserve it, even though you've been working hard the whole time, you know, or if I mean there's really a lot of things, but it's almost like if every time you achieve a new level of success or what you may deem success in life, if you're self-aware or self-conscious at all, you'll experience this a little bit, but it's not a bad thing. So, Dalton, have you ever experienced this, man? Um, what's been your experience with it?
Yeah, like definitely growing up and from like in construction, a lot of times, they tell you to go do something and you're not confident that you can do it or you don't really know, or you put a bid out on a job that and you're like, well, I don't really know how to do 100% of this, or maybe you do, and someone's constantly questioning you. Um, it definitely makes you feel like, oh well, maybe somebody else should be doing this and not me. um, and So I've definitely felt it in that area. And then the other area, which occasionally comes and goes, is like when I'm at the gym, working out. I don't, I would assume this is like 95 to almost every man in the gym, maybe. But you go to the gym and like you have your routine that you go through, and like you always feel like, I don't really know what I'm doing in here. I should probably um, copy somebody else and what they're doing. Maybe they know better what they're doing. So that's kind of the two areas I've probably struggled with imposter syndrome of I shouldn't be doing this. But
Right. I think the gym's a good example, probably, because it's like you see other people working out around you, and they're using different weights than you. Like for some of the training that I just do strength training, and I'm using really high weights, and I look over, and there's this bigger guy next to me using lighter weights, and it's like, you know, I don't know, am I doing this wrong? But it, it that's not really the point, I guess. But yeah, so I started taking notes on this topic, and some of the things I came across were really interesting, and I think what sparked it the most was um, I probably what sparked this idea in my head was that I grew really quickly on social media, and um, and then so I was at like 18,000 followers, which is not like a crazy amount, and then all of a sudden I got another 15,000 in a month. So then it makes you think like, oh, there's this many people watching what I'm posting, what I'm putting out there. Do I deserve to be speaking to them? Do I deserve to be sharing knowledge to all these people? Like, so that kind of sparked that within me, where I was kind of like anxious about it. And it was like, I don't know if I even have the right to be speaking. Um, to these people about just really the topics that I felt needed to be spoken on. So that's where it sparked. And so here are some of the notes that I took, and then bro, feel free to comment on any of them. But one of the first realizations that I came across was that like nobody knows anything, you know. Um, the majority of people, and it's cool because the place where I'm at, like I get to, I've got a couple millionaires, people making millions of dollars in my phone that I can text, and like that that's so cool being able to talk to them. But one of the things that I've realized with talking to them is that they're still figuring it out. It's like they're older than me, they're making a lot more money than me, but they're still figuring it out, and they will openly admit to being like, yeah, I don't know, but I'm open to trying and learning. So with imposter syndrome, it's like I feel like I need to know all this stuff but to have earned this position where I'm at. But in reality, it's like everyone's still learning, and you're never going to be like, oh, well, this is, I've got it all figured out. I don't need it. I don't need to learn more. So that was one of the first things that I learned. Another thing I wrote here was like the most successful in our eyes are in our eyes 99% of the time are just like us. So they're just further along in the journey. And that was a pretty comforting realization as well, where it's like they just put in more reps than you, kind of like how the gym is. The so the millionaires, they've just been at the gym for longer than you. It's pretty much how it is. You go in and you're out of
Yeah.
shape, and it's like, oh man, I'd love to be like that guy. Well, that guy's just been in here a lot longer than you. So if you want to be like that guy, you just gotta get to work, put in the work, and eventually you will be. And and then you'll have earned it. So yeah. Any thoughts on that, man? I kind of breezed through that.
No, I liked it. I looked up the word. It's like imposter syndrome. So obviously, an imposter is someone who's pretending to be someone else, most of the time in order to deceive someone. And so our mind wraps around, um, I think it's actually a realization of some of us, like for us to have that, is that we're not perfect human beings. And I think it's a realization in our mind of, hey, you want to make sure that you're not doing something, saying that you are something that you're not, um, or acting in a manner that you are something that you're not. And I think the second part of that is okay to do, is to act in a manner of something that you are not. Because everybody has to act in a manner of something that they were not to begin with to become something better. But it can go either way. You can act like something that you're not, so that then you can deceive and get something that you don't deserve. And so, and I think all of us have probably at some point in our lives acted or done something in a way to where we could get something that we didn't actually deserve. And I think it's our mind kind of fighting against that, saying, no, 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 no. I put the work in for this. This is mine. This is rightfully mine. And so that's where I was kind of thinking and carrying on. But yeah, I think what you said
Yeah.
was pretty on point.
Yeah, there's a there's definitely a difference between deceiving and then just feeling like you have deceived, or something
Yeah,
like that. It's and I want to be clear though, like this feeling that you have, if you do feel this way, it's like it's a good thing because it means you're self-aware enough and your mental health is good enough to realize that, like, to even question this. So, um, if you're dealing with it means that you're actually your mental health is in a pretty good place. So So like how to fix that, that would be the next step. But yeah, what you had said, I had a thought about it, and I think Alex Hormozy even did talked a little bit about imposter syndrome. Yeah, he did. And one of his things was like, uh, whenever he teaches people how to make money in business, or um, he speaks to what he's achieved. Because I think one of his things was like, he's like, I'll tell you how to make 100 million, but I'm not going to tell you how to make like 100 billion because I've never done that. I can't help you with that. He's like, so how I fight imposter syndrome, and was his take on it, was like, I teach what I know because that comes from an authentic place. I actually have the the reps, um, the stack of work behind me that shows that yes, this is what I have done. You know, so yeah, th there's the difference between being on social media and being like, I'll teach you how to make 100 billion, pay me $1,000 to buy my course, you know, and the way you're making your 100 billion is by selling $1,000 courses. And then there's a difference between him being on there being like, all right, I'm going to teach you what I've done to make my 100 million. So there's definitely the difference between that, and it comes from a place of authenticity, like you just said. Being an imposter or feeling like the imposter is a good is a good diff, thing to differentiate from. So one of the notes that I'd taken, and I think I was watching a YouTube video on this, and it says, and what I wrote down was, growth is uncomfortable. A new level in life can be terrifying. It upsets the status quo and often induces imposter syndrome. The thing the thing is, though, that almost everyone experiences imposter syndrome, so take it as a sign that you're improving and realize that you're not the only one. So, in my experience with this is like, at every new level of life, it can be scary. So like growth is scary to a degree, change is scary. So every
Hmm.
time you step up in life, it's a new plane, you know. And at first, that new step is scary because it's like everything is new. Everyone on that level could be further along than you, so you're seeing what they're doing, and you're like, oh man, I don't really deserve to be here. They're doing a really great job, or they're performing very well. So it upsets the, oh well, um, the average daily rituals that you have done, or something like that. I'm trying to explain this without tripping up too much, but yeah, yeah, I don't know, I don't know, I don't want to confuse it. Do you have any thoughts on what I just said, man? I don't want to.
No, continue on. Continue on.
Yeah, I don't want to keep tripping up, but it's like, I think yeah, so like when you're making, so I'm gonna compare this to like earning money in business, just because this is what I've had experience with. But like when you got your first client, you're one client, and you're doing all your work for them, and maybe you're putting in too much work because you don't know a lot of systems and processes to speed up your time, and then you get another client, and it's like, oh, like, okay, that's awesome, let's help them. But then a few months down the road, you've got 6 or 7 clients, and it's a whole new ball field because you're making a lot more money. You've got to handle a lot more people, but you can't spend as much time with every single one of them. So you have to make things quicker, and so things change. You're on a new level. You've got to figure out a new way to help people. That's maybe quicker. So it's different, you know, um, and that can cause a bit of fear, like, do I deserve to be here? Do I deserve to help all these people? You're making more money, you're doing more things, but um, it's just definitely a new level. It upsets the, okay, I've been working with one person. And now I have to work with seven. Seven people are counting on me. Um, anyway, I'll move on. Um, I I take these notes and then it makes sense in my head, man. And then trying to explain
No,
it
I
a little bit better, it's uh it's definitely a trip.
no, I think that makes sense. I think what you just said makes sense, and it can that can definitely lead you to an imposter syndrome type of deal because at the start, maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I'm missing your point entirely. But at the start, you're providing a service for one person, and you're able to provide them a great service. And then, but the thing is that you're growing, and you can't just provide service for one person. So you're providing services now for several people, and so now you can't do as much for that first person as you are for everybody. You have to kind of split it up, and it's the same in every other area and every other business. Same thing with construction. If I only had one customer, then I can completely focus and give him a level of value and worth that is much higher than any other company that has 20 customers. The other companies just don't compare. However, you're giving them something more valuable than what they're paying for. And
Right.
so as you go along, you realize that then you start feeling like you're an imposter or that you've been deceiving somebody. It's like, no, you haven't been deceiving somebody. You just got started. Um, and they got to receive the benefits of you starting. And so sometimes we have to think out what it's sometimes it's hard to value ourselves, and I think that kind of ties in with imposter syndrome, is because sometimes we ourselves offer something so good that's actually worth more than what we're charging, um, and so it comes back to, oh, now I feel like I'm gypping you because you're not getting what you initially got, which in reality they were getting more than what the customer actually was paying for.
Yeah.
Um, but does that kind of make sense, or is that?
Yeah, I think you explained that well. Yeah. Yeah, because then the level of the amount of work that you put in goes a little bit down to probably where you should have been in the beginning, you know? And then you feel bad.
Yeah,
You feel like, oh man, I don't deserve to do this because just a different level of effort there. And maybe even the client notices it and they're like, why don't I get this and this and this? And then maybe two or three of the clients are like, why aren't you working as hard as you used to? Or maybe not as hard as you used to, but why isn't the same amount of effort being put into my stuff as it used to be? And then you feel guilty, you feel like an imposter, like I don't deserve to be doing this, you know. But in reality, you're just growing as a person, you're growing as a business, and it's just part of it.
yeah.
Um, so
A great. Oh, go ahead.
no, you're good. I was just gonna keep going down my little list, man.
Oh, okay. We had growth is uncomfortable. A new level in life can be terrifying. It obsesses status quo and often induces imposter syndrome. The thing that is, though, that almost everyone experiences imposter syndrome. So take it as a sign that you're improving and realizing you're not the only one. I think that right there, and I kind of just had this thought as we were talking, but perfectly illustrates exactly why people don't like church, is because you go there and there's a bunch of people trying to pretend like there's something that they're not. And that's because a lot of them are doing something that they're not, but they're trying to grow. And so they're trying to become better. It's kind of like when someone decides, okay, I'm going to stop wasting my life away and doing evil things. I'm going to try and do good, and I'm going to do righteous things. As soon as they swap that day and walk in, they're completely changing they're flipping their life completely upside down. So they're going to fail, they're going to slip, but they're stepping into an area that they don't know. And so to a degree, um, you're an imposter, but you're not, because you're not trying to deceive anybody. You're trying to um, you're trying to learn a new way that's not the way that you've ever been taught. Um, I think that's a really good thought on that. I don't know. That was just kind of came to mind. But
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it goes back to what you had stated in the very beginning, the difference between being an imposter and then suffering from the imposter syndrome. Because like people can be at church and be acting like they're on some plane of spirituality that you'll never be on because they're just such a good person, you know? And and then you feel bad because maybe they're kind of showboating around like, oh, and talking like, oh yeah, my morning prayer this for an hour this morning was just so great. In reality, they're probably just sleeping, where it's like, or there's the difference between like them walking around with some sort of air of spirituality around them, but in reality, it's like a level of cockiness or something like that. So there's the difference between actually being spiritual and then pretending like you're spiritual and then deceiving people
mm-hmm.
into thinking that you're spiritual. So don't be the imposter, right? Don't be the
Right.
imposter, but it's okay to feel like it because like the way like what you just said, it's like you have to work at it. So if you want to reach a new level of spirituality or whatever, it's like you got to pretend, right? You got to put in the reps. You actually, well, not pretend, I guess, but you have to put in the effort. And so you eventually you begin to act like you're on that level, right? You know, say the say the pastor he reads the Bible for like 30 minutes a day and prays for 30 minutes a day. It's like, well, I would like to be like him, or I'd like to have that level of connection with God. And so you start reading for 30 minutes and praying for 30 minutes, you know, um, because you have to you have to put in the work. But there's a difference between being like I you, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse here, but there's the difference, right? So
Yeah. Um, a verse came to mind as soon as we were wrapping this up. Um, but it's the 2 Corinthians 12. It says, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Um, and I think verse 10, "Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities and reproaches and necessities and persecutions and distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong." I kind of think that us having that imposter syndrome can be a good thing, um, because we're acknowledging that that we don't know, and so it's encouraging us um, to take our weaknesses and make them stronger. And you can do the same thing in a Christian aspect. That's actually what's required in in a Christian, is that they acknowledge that they're weak, so that then they can become strong. Acknowledge that they're nothing and that they don't deserve to be there, so that then they can realize, okay, God says I'm allowed to be here, so I guess I'm allowed to be here. So
right. One one thing that came to mind was it's like if if while you're working on something and you're criticized by someone for trying, you know, you're never going to be criticized by the person that's ahead of you and doing what you're wanting to do. So like there's the difference between criticism and advice. The people that are ahead of you, if they're going to talk to you about what you're trying to do, they'll give advice. But the people behind you, they'll give criticism because they'll criticize you for putting in the effort. They'll criticize you for trying, for being different at what you're working on. So that was just thought there, because criticism can definitely help uh, make you feel like you're an imposter, right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
someone's like, "Why are you talking about this topic? I grew up with you. You don't do this. You don't, it, where it's like, and then you're like, oh man, well, he might be right, and then you start thinking about it, and you're like, oh man, do I actually deserve to be talking about this? And it starts this whole cycle, you know. So realizing there's the difference between that is has been key as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that word criticize has so long been used as a negative term. That word criticize has not always been a negative term, but I understand that today, that normally when someone says, "Oh, I'm criticizing this person," immediately it means bad. Um, and I don't believe that the original meaning of that word actually meant to tear someone down or in a negative way. Criticize means to judge in the effects of of beauty and faults. So you're to look and decide, okay, this is what's positive, this is what's negative. It's like the word critic. It's like movie critics. It's like, are they tearing the movie down or are they saying something good? Well, it could be both. If you hop on the movie critics, you could see one area that says this movie was great, and another critic that says that word that that says that the movie is bad. And that word critic comes directly from the word criticize. It's written in it. And so when we criticize, I think that that statement is true for people who are doing something, but for people who are not doing anything, I think that statement's completely false. As far as you'll never be criticized by someone who's doing more than you. Um, that's because that's how we learn. I mean, we have to be knocked down a little bit. Um, we have to be humbled a little bit and say, "Hey, you're doing great, but you're lacking a little in these three areas," which then can be looked at as advice. Which advice? I think advice kind of comes along with here's how you can do better versus criticizes here's what you're doing wrong. So I would say criticizing without giving advice is useless.
Right,
So if you're going to criticize somebody, give them the advice if they're willing to accept criticism, which obviously if you should be able to know who's capable of accepting criticism around you. Um, some people take it very hard. Some people don't take it hard at all. They want to grow, and so they'll listen to anything and everything that everybody says, and search it out and see if it's true. But if you criticize, you should definitely follow up with advice. Here's something that you should do to
right.
help you in those areas.
Yeah, you're right on that, man. I think there is that difference. But like you had said, though, it's like if it's coming from a positive place, then it's more like advice, right? And if it's from a negative place, then it's more like degrading and just
Yeah.
what is the word for that anyways? Where it's like if we're not going to use the word criticism, what's the word? Um,
Well, the word criticism um, works for both. It's a neutral word. So it was either bad criticism or good criticism. So that's how you would word that is okay. I got, um, well, I guess you're saying more in a, somebody's coming off to you
it's
in more of an angry tone, trying to beat you down, trying to tear you down. Um, that's the word that you're looking for, I think, is that
Right.
type of person that's trying to tear you down. Um,
It's criticism without advice, I think is the simple way of putting it. There's criticism with advice and criticism without, and constructive criticism, I think, is it comes from the people that are above you. Because I definitely get constructive criticism from some of the people that I work with that
yeah,
are way further ahead of me. And it's like, I really appreciate this. Um, and then there's
I'm just
the,
gonna I'm just gonna Google opposite of criticism.
yeah, you're good, man. You're good. Yeah, so I guess it would be good to make that differentiation or whatever. Because while I was listening to that little segment, I was thinking like, well, I do get criticism from people ahead of me, but at the same time, they actually follow it up with, this is how you could be doing better. And then whenever you're getting criticism from someone that's not doing anything remotely close to what you're doing, it uh it just ends with just the criticism. You know, there's no there's
Hmm.
no this is how you could be doing better. Even if you ask them, it's like, well, what do you think I should be doing better then? And they've got nothing. They're just there to criticize and mock or whatever, you know.
Hmm. I think a word you could do is like, yeah, that right there is a great one. Mocker. A mocker. Someone's just going around mocking, or a condemner, or a um, you could even probably use the word hypocritical or uh, judgmental person. Today we could call them, they're judgmental. They're judging everything that you do in a negative way is normally the way that that word is used. Um, yeah, those people are definitely not the people you want to hang around. um, but yeah, I think you said it. So I think you nailed it there.
Yeah. I guess it's living in a world where words are so important, yet people are trying to change them all the time. Is You got to double check, right? So anyway, I appreciate that little tangent there. I'm glad
Yeah.
we sorted that through, but I guess that's why we talk about words on the podcast, because like going back to the origin of why it's important, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I for me personally, like, just like everybody's always like, oh, I want motivation, I want encouragement, I want this, and I don't want anybody to be tearing me down. And it's like, well, it's like that's great, and I want to encourage you, but sometimes encouragement requires me to tear you down. So it's like when we use words criticize so many times now, like everybody just kind of takes these words and they're like, oh, criticize, judgmental, all these hypocritical, this person's hypocritical if they say something negative towards me. We're just going to put them in this category, and we're going to pretend like they're not helping at all because they use these harsh words. And it's like, no, you should let people criticize you. You should let people tear you down a little bit. You can normally tell pretty quickly if somebody's tearing you down to help you or to destroy you. It's not hard, because I think I think that's a good way to tell is if somebody criticizes you and then gives you the advice, um, to do better. Normally, you can tell pretty quick. It's like if they're just dogging on you, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to ignore what you're saying then. But you definitely, I don't know how else to identify someone's fault or to help them without, pointing out the wrong. It's like, here's what you're doing wrong. Here, now do it right. And so,
Yeah.
but that's why, like, most for me, like when we come across words or things, it's like they agitate me, actually. Like, the words agitate me because I know that they're being used wrong like 90% of the time, and so I want people to understand where I'm coming from. And so I think personally is because I constantly get accused by people. It's like, Dalton, why would you say it that way? It's like, that was really mean. And I was like, well, how would you have said it? Like, I'm just trying to get to the point. It's like, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to get to the point, like, hey, here's the problem, dude. Like, especially with men, I'm probably a little bit more, straightforward. It's like, here's the problem, dude. Why don't you just not do this and do it this way? And this is the right way to do it. Um, but so many people look at that now as you're being critical, and you're not encouraging them, and it's this and that, and I don't know. But that's why I think probably I get kind of emotional about it, is because I get called out on being mean constant. And I don't think I'm a mean person, but maybe you disagree. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we're gonna open this can of worms on the podcast. All right. Um, no, I mean, you're 100% right. And that's why we have to, I guess, do our research, and it just gets me thinking, of course, um, a lot. But anyway, let's wrap this up with a couple just I guess I'm gonna read these tweets that I found that I think are really helpful. And um, yeah, feel free to add in whatever, man. So there's a tweet by Tim Stoddart. He says the cure for imposter syndrome, and this is for content creators, people that are writing, people that are trying to put out good stuff into the world, or at least educate people, whatever your goal is with it. It's like he says the cure for imposter syndrome is write to your younger self. There's a 100% chance that you know more than that person and can give them good advice. And try and see it for yourself. And this really helped me because I tried this, and it where it was like I thought about something I'd tell my 18-year-old self, and then it really helped me with some writing that I was struggling with. So um, I love that one. There's another one here. It says imposter syndrome is bullcrap. Everyone who's doing anything challenging is reaching outside their what my my tweet got
Comfort or
their current level of competence or something like that, and it says, but you aren't an imposter, you're stretching, and that's what you should do. So I think that really summarizes it right there. It's a good one, and this one's by Chris D. Macro, or Chris Dover, however
mm-hmm.
his name is. But it's like, you aren't the imposter, you are stretching, and that's what you should do. I think that's a good summary. Um, I also have one more, but it's a very, very long one right here. And essentially it's a tweet by an author, and he has written 3 books now. But on after he published his first book, like, he felt imposter syndrome like crazy. Like, he just had so much anxiety about it because it's like he just published a book, and that's a pretty big accomplishment, I'd say. And the way he solved it was through just putting in reps, just going back to work and keep working. It's like, because he's like, well, he didn't feel like an author, or he didn't feel like he deserved to write this book. But it's like, the way to beat it is to just keep writing. Just keep working. If you don't feel like you've earned it. Keep keep working until you do feel like you've earned it. Don't stop and just let yourself sit. You know. Well, I thought that was a really good tweet. And if you wanted to look him up, his name is John Acuff, or Acuff later. But anyways, that is all the notes I've taken for imposter syndrome over the last couple weeks, and just being present and aware. So Do you have any thoughts, man? Any closing arguments?
Closing arguments. Um, no, I think my favorite one is imposter syndrome is bull crap. Everyone who's doing anything challenging is reaching outside their core level competence. But you're not an imposter, you're stretching, and that's what you should do. And I think that's kind of I think that pretty much sums up, what everybody should be doing. Um, and yeah, so I think that's my favorite tweet out of those.
Yeah, I think that's the good summary. But I also think my favorite was probably by Tim, where his and this is for creators, so that's why I like it the most. Where it's like write to your younger
Yeah,
self. If you don't know what to write or you feel uncomfortable at the moment, it's like there's an 18-year-old version of you that could have used this advice. So if it helped the 18-year-old version of you, it'll probably help a lot more people that are in your same position. So share that knowledge, you know, be authentic, I guess. If you've been down that path, you can share about the path.
yeah.
But anyway, uh, yeah, we'll wrap it up. Next week's topic. What is next week's topic, by the way? Uh, we, we
I
decided on
think
it.
it was Grace.
Grace. Okay, that'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting one.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, I'm trying to pull up my notes here. I'm pretty sure it's Grace.
It probably is.
No, gratitude. My bad.
Oh, gratitude.
Gratitude.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, join us next week for
So,
gratitude. Talk about that. Anyways, hope you all have a good week and talk to y'all later.